The Volpe Bazzo Report. I'm your co-host, Dominic Volpe. With us once again is my co-host, Andy Bazzo.
Back from Florida, aren't you?
No, I didn't go to Florida. Stop telling people that. and with us tonight, our special guest is the mayoral candidate for the city of Peekskill, Frank Catalina. Welcome, Frank.
Welcome, Frank.
Right.
Before we start, just to clear things up, you're not only the Republican candidate, you have the independence line, correct?
And the conservative line.
And the conservative
We
line.
won the independence primary, it became official this morning.
Okay, congratulations. So
very
that
much.
we got a scoop then.
2-1 victory, and they were right in. So that's
You're right.
It's a tremendous victory for our campaign.
Oh, yes.
It's the first, we've been getting good vibes throughout the campaign for 9 months, throughout the community, through all the different neighborhoods, through all different groups. But this was the first objective result that tells us we're getting our message out
And the
there.
opposing team actually had the endorsement of the party, so you wrest the endorsement from them in the primary as a write-in.
I guess it's not too hard to get that endorsement if you do the right thing or make the right promises.
But the fact is that their name was printed, they had to write your name.
It doesn't matter. The people decide.
Right, then they did.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we saw that in Yorktown too. Our highway superintendent on the Republican line is Dave Paganelli for November, and he was not the endorsed candidate. In these new electronic machines, it's easy not to be the endorsed candidate and still pull off a victory. I mean, so we saw Greg Ball do this and Steve Katz 2 years ago.
Right. So the key there is that it's whoever's endorsed, their names automatically show up on the ballot. In your case, people had to go in there and write your name specifically.
It was called an opportunity to ballot.
Right.
And you still had to collect a valid number of signatures to do that, right?
Yes.
Okay, now listen, some quick homework. As the people of this show know, you can see my column every week in the Yorktown News, and this is my first anniversary with the Yorktown News, and this is our first anniversary together on the Volpe Bazzo
Imagine
Report.
that, 1 year.
Yeah, and we haven't killed each other, and you're still talking to me.
And I still have, I don't
That's
have any
amazing.
gray hair after 1 year.
Now, we're taping here on October 2nd. It's important for people to understand this. The second day of the government shutdown. And second day, nobody's noticed. And I was explaining to you off the air that the dirty little secret that the establishment, both the Republicans and Democrat drag, like Peter King and John McCain, that didn't want you to know, and the Democrats themselves, is how little the federal government interacts with your life. This is why they didn't want the shutdown, because you're going to find out that you can really get along with most of your days, live, breathe, go to work, go home, and watch TV without any government interference. What affects your life, and I've said this many times, I've written this, I've said this, is the local governments. Locals, your town, your county, and your state. The ones with the lowest voter turnout is the one that actually affects your life.
Correct.
And so now that's why we're focusing on the Peekskill election in this episode, because this is a very contentious election. I've said this publicly. I think this is Mary Forster's even tougher than Bill Schmidt. And the only reason why that was a tough one is because Schmidt was a known and Mary was an unknown. You've been known in the city. You work for the city government. You're not new to the area. And Mary's been mayor for now, 6 years now. And she's looking for a fourth term. Mm-hmm. So what I want to know, I've read your advertorials in the other paper. These are very good things you do, though. I mean, that's very good. It gives you time to explain your message, which is a good thing. And I've seen your posts online and all this, and you always talk about your plan for business. Can you tell the people what your plan for bringing business into Peekskill is? To bring business, because we've seen the empty store. I own a taxi company, part owner of a taxi company that operates out of Peekskill. Dominic's been a businessman in Peekskill for what?
Well, 46
years. So we drive around and we see these empty stores. Now, some can be attributed to the recession, but not everything is attributed to the recession. So how would you change the dynamic to start filling up empty storefronts?
Well, when we talk about bringing in new business into Peekskill, we're not just talking about filling an empty storefront. We're talking about bringing substantial employers who employ between 15 and 30 people into Peekskill. And we think we can do that by marketing Peekskill the right way. Look, we're only an hour and a half from the Port of New York and the Port of New Jersey. Many companies import products from all over the world, and they have little stickers on them that say assembled in the United States. We can be one of those assembly points. Like I said, we're very close to these ports. We have available buildings that can be retooled relatively quickly. We have available workers. We have available housing that's affordable for those workers, and there's just no reason why we should pick up the newspaper, any newspaper, and see that Yonkers, Dobbs Ferry, Tarrytown, Haverstraw, Beacon, Newburgh are the Renaissance cities on the Hudson River. There's absolutely no reason for that.
Elmsford, I mean, why?
All of them. Everybody seems to have developed their towns and their villages along the city, yet we have the most beautiful spot on the Hudson River, in my opinion. We have a 90-degree angle. It's the beginning of the Hudson Highlands, and we're kind of stuck. Now, this current administration will point to Restaurant Row as a great achievement on their part, but if you actually dissect it, you'll see that two of those 4 restaurants were there before she even took office, and the 2 that came there were private investment, had nothing really to do with the city. Her best block, Restaurant Row, has 5 vacancies. That's about 20% of the storefronts are vacant on her best block. If you go down Main Street to City Hall, it's a lot higher. If you go up Main Street to the Beach Shopping Center, you'll see a lot of vacant stores.
But now, listen, I come from a town now, because Dominic's lucky. He lives in a town that has been very good to attract business. And that has to do with policy. I come from a town that for years was anti-business. For years. We have a supervisor council now that has 3 businessmen on it. So now it's starting to attract business. I think a lot has to do with making regulations and rules. And would you be looking into those things to make Peekskill attractive, to say, I want to bring my money here?
Yes.
And invest in this city like Michael Grace has done in Yorktown, like Puglisi has done, more than proven in Cortland.
Let me tell you a little bit about the regulatory process in Peekskill.
Well, you've been there.
I have a client who put his 3 kids through college by building houses. He works for Indian Point. He works at Indian Point for the Power Authority. And he builds a house, say, in Putnam County, and he does it with modulars. And he was successful. He's not a big builder. He builds maybe 1 house every 2 years.
1 second, Frank. What is a modular? Because you can't assume that
A
people know
modular
what
house
you
is
know.
where he buys the land, he clears it, he puts his septic tank in, he builds a foundation, he makes a phone call, and they come with a prefabbed house that goes right onto the foundation.
Okay.
And then he makes the connections and he sells the house at a profit. He's not a big-time builder. He's a full-time worker for the Power Authority. He was able to put 3 kids through college doing that. He told me in 2006 or so that he wanted to buy a lot in Peekskill, to do a lot in Peekskill. I told him Peekskill's a little difficult under this mayor. He bought the lot anyway. To build a prefab single-family house in a single-family zone, it took him 22 months to do. Now, that's a little ridiculous. You go through the planning board. Then if you don't have the area or whatever, he was a foot short on one side, he had to go before the zoning board. And then when you go through that regulatory process, then you have to go back to the architectural review board. Then you have to make sure that some Indian didn't bury the tip of an arrow on the property. So there has to be screened for that. There's nothing wrong with preserving our historical background. But when the process is so cumbersome that it takes a single family home builder 22 months to build a single-family home, that's permitted. It's a permitted
just curious.
use.
I'm not sure with Peek. I know Yorktown. Every one of these processes you mentioned, do they require a check to the city of Peekskill too?
There's a process. The fees are the fees. I don't know exactly what the fees are.
No, I mean everyone requires a fee
course.
though.
Right.
So that's more capital being expended not on your property, but to do something. It's another drain of cash. That's what I'm saying.
I'll tell you, Andy, for most businessmen, as you know, and Dominic knows, it's not so much the fees and the cost, it's the time. You want to do something. I think this will be a great, there was an ice cream store in Peekskill. I know a lawyer in town who told me that his client, the ice cream store shut down, his client was coming in to do a Japanese restaurant. He was told to plan on going through a process that would take 12 to 18 months. I think that's wrong, and I think that should be changed. If you want to open up a business, if an ice cream store goes out of business and they're selling ice cream, I don't know why it would take 3 months to get an approval to sell sushi there. I just don't get it, and nobody can explain it to me. I talked to the lawyer, he shrugged his shoulders. He can't. The person can't afford him, so they're going to go through the process alone. I think it's wrong. Look, I think there's a way that we can streamline that planning process. When somebody comes in and wants to make an application to build a single-family home or 200 homes on a large tract of land, or 200 whatever the project is, they can lay it out and fully submit it to the planning board. Simultaneously, it can go before the Historic Landmarks Preservation Board, it can go to the Architectural Review Board, and it can go before the Common Council for any special use permits simultaneously. Everybody can review it, report back in 30 days.
It's the same plan we're talking about.
Report back in 30 days. If the Architectural Review Board wants bigger windows, smaller windows, wooden windows instead of metal windows, there's no reason why, once you go through the planning stages, that you have to start all over again with another board just for architectural review. And I'm not saying they don't have a purpose or a point in the process, but that has to be streamlined and curtailed.
Well, time is money.
Time is the most essential element. And we have not been expanding our tax base, so the longer we take businesses that want to come into Peekskill and tell them it's going to be 2 years before you can put a key in the door, it's going to be 2 years before we realize any difference in our tax base. It's simple to me. I don't know why this is.
So in other words, by allowing, if there's an investment group or an investors period that want to come in and say, listen, if we go to X, Y, and Z city or town, it takes 10 to 12 months, but you go here and it's taking 2-3 times longer, that we're hurting the investment into the city of Peekskill.
Well, not only are you hurting it, but you're stifling it. Look, the largest landowner along the Peekskill waterfront is the Ginsberg Development Corporation. There's a reason why Mr. Ginsberg, the only investment he's made in the past 6 years in the city of Peekskill under this administration, the only investment he's made is about $120,000 to put a fence around all of his properties. I know what that reason is, and I'm not free to share it with you because he told me it wasn't for publication. But if you want to call him up, call the Ginsberg Development Corporation. Ask him why he hasn't developed the land he paid millions of dollars for under the LWRP. He was the preferred builder for the city of Peekskill. Why hasn't there been any development under the LWRP after the Ginsberg Development Corporation came in and spent about $15 million acquiring that property? And the answer will shock you.
Well, all I know is I remember that race very well, and he said he was going to do this if the election didn't go with the candidate he was endorsing. Well, he kept his word. I mean, he's a businessman. He's entitled to. I mean, we all sign the front of a paycheck. We all sign the front of a paycheck, and we know that it's very frustrating when you deal with a governing board where all they ever done their entire life is sign the back of a paycheck. They just can't relate to this. But I want to bounce on to something else, because we've talked about this in a number of shows, and that's your relationship and a relationship you're going to have with the surrounding towns, because you share watersheds and many things, and we've talked about with Dominic and all this. Do you think you can play well with others in the other towns and still protect the town you're representing?
I believe that Peekskill has been a good neighbor to the surrounding towns. We are completely surrounded by the town of Cortland, starting up by the Bear Mountain Bridge and wrapped right around. In fact, we were a village, part of the town of Cortland, right up until 1940. I think we can, but we're not going to be anybody's dumping ground.
I don't mean we. I mean, can you? I mean, because
can play well
you're
with
going to be the head honcho if you win. So it's not. That's not a lot of times because you'll go back to the board. You're going to have to deal with like Puglisi, who's been there since we were kids.
22.
I mean, we were little babies in diapers when she was elected. I mean,
well, Supervisor Puglisi has done an excellent job for her town, but she's done an excellent job. Not saying I'm a Democrat or you're a Republican. Right. She's done a good job because she recognizes the importance of expanding her tax base. The Cortland Town Center didn't happen because she had a view of Cortland to be something like Cold Spring, like this administration has of Peekskill. They built the Cortland Town Center. They didn't say, well, you're going to fill in a little bit of a swampy area, or you're going to ruin somebody's view of
the ducks.
Mount Mohegan up there. You know, there's a reason why the car dealerships left Peekskill and built out there. There's a reason for that, and the reason is, number one, they recognize the importance of having an industrial commercial corridor to expand their tax base, and they say yes to reasonable, smart development, and Peekskill has said no. Peekskill has lost great opportunities. They've lost the target. They've lost the opportunity to have these car dealerships and other development close to Peekskill, where the population base is. I believe that. We have Route 9, we're right on the river, we have the railroad. There's so many things that we have that we ignore for the sake of, I don't know why, I don't know what the sake is that they're not doing this, but there's a reasonable economic development that can take place with an administration that is going to say yes and not no all the time.
Would you say on the residential side, are we almost tapped out as far as really any developable land, the land that's developable, or are we looking to increase the commercial or industrial, sector of our, in other words, if we've got 30% vacant land, commercial or industrial, is that where we augment in order to increase our tax base? Is that what you're looking to do, or because on the residential side, you look around and you really, we're pretty tapped out. I mean, think of a property that's in the city of Peekskill for residential. There's really not that much left unless it's a big tract.
And all that you own yourself. I mean, really.
Well, there is available land to be developed. Not as large tracts as, say, there were in the 80s when
Right.
Society Hill or Chapel Hill was redeveloped.
Right.
But there's also a large area there's a lot of properties in Peekskill that can be retooled, torn down and rebuilt, or retooled and save the historical significance of those buildings for residential purposes. But I believe the commercial end of the city has a very deep tradition and a deep history of industrial production. I'm not saying bring back factories that spew pollution into the air, but we can attract companies in biomedical fields, in the high-tech fields. But look, we're not going to attract Apple. Microsoft is not going to open a plant here in Peekskill. We probably won't even get their first or second level suppliers, but their third level suppliers, those are the companies that are going to employ 10 to 15 to 30 different
Shippers.
employees. And exactly. And we're so close, we're 50 miles from the center of the universe, New York City. Everything in the world revolves around New York City. And here we are 50 miles away, and we're like a stepchild, a redheaded stepchild. There's no reason why we can't develop Peekskill. There's absolutely no reason for it, whether it's residentially or commercially. But I think the commercial part of the city has been so neglected for so long that's where I would focus a lot of my attention on.
No.
You bring in an employee with 30 people, housing will follow.
Now, another thing that's been talked about in your neighboring towns and done in your neighboring towns, and something you brought up the last time we talked about, a thing called shared services. Like sharing with, like in Yorktown shares the stuff with the school district, Lakeland and Yorktown School District to cut down on the expenses. Do you have a vision for shared services with Peekskill? You have two school districts here, Henrik Hudson and Peekskill.
Right. Well, we have a history of sharing services with the school district. Look, municipal budgets are crazy tight right now. They have been for years. I served on the school board in the city of Peekskill back in the 80s. We share some services for the parks and the tracks that people use. For some reason, there seems to be what they call the firewall between the city and the school district, and I don't believe that that's in the best interest of the city. We can't just say, well, we take care of the city and we don't want to know about our school rank in the history of the world or the history of New York State, where Peekskill ranks. I think it's very important to the city of Peekskill. And we can do everything we can, but we're not going to attract families with young
As a man
families.
in the taxi industry, I can tell you a lot of parents that do not send their kids to the Peekskill School District. They send them. I take a lot of kids. I don't know what's in Dobbs Ferry because I don't have any young kids that age. But a lot of these kids come up from these schools in Dobbs Ferry to go home. Do you think there's something that the city government can do to work with a school district to bring up its ranking?
Well, I think Ronald Reagan, when he was president, said that the presidency was the biggest bully pulpit in the world. And I believe the mayor's office is a bully pulpit. We represent the city of Peekskill, and there's no reason why the mayor can't pick up the phone and talk to the superintendent and have a meeting with the school board and say, why are you contracting with outside companies instead of local companies for, say, bus services or other services, and let him know the views. And I'm not saying publicly go out and lash him, but but privately call him and have more of an open. And the city's not trying to take over the school district. I'm not
You can't.
saying that at all.
You really can't. State
But
law would prevent that.
There's no reason why we can't talk and have an honest and open exchange of ideas and meet once every 2 or 3 months or meet once a month and cut through some of this stuff. we are directly tied into the success of our school district. If the school district is failing, the city of Peekskill will always fail. The problem, what you described, is that Peekskill was attractive because we had affordable housing at low taxes that people could afford to send their kids to private school. Now, that's kind of not the case anymore. You have a 2,800 square foot house here, and it's going to be comparable in price to the same square footage house in Cortland, and now the taxes are just about at the same. So therefore, it comes down to, where am I going to send my kids to school, Peekskill or Henrik Hudson? And we're finding great difficulty through my discussions with local brokers attracting families into Peekskill, and that's a problem.
There was a movement about, let's say, 15 years ago, where under even the past administration beyond the one that's currently there, where we catered to the artist district, and it was important for the revitalization of a downtown that pretty much was dead. However, I've heard in the past like 2-3 years, investors who came in and put up apartments, retooled buildings to make it, which was empty and vacant, they made it into either 1, 2, 3, 4, apartments. But the problem was,
And modernized the amenities.
right? But the problem was, it only catered to artists.
Right.
So now, and what happened is the list that from 15 years ago, when there were 200 that wanted to come into the city, now it's literally void. There's no one there, and yet the law says that only artists can go into those artists' lofts, artists' apartments. And the homeowner, or the investor, I should say, is saying, hey, wait a minute. He goes, I've got 4 apartments and I can't rent it out. Is it a time for rezoning in the downtown in order to allow that, to open that up to, through the bid?
Well, it's only right you have an office downtown.
Well, no,
I
no,
mean,
no,
so-
no, no, I don't mean an office.
No,
I'm not
I
talking
mean,
about-
he
Let me-
knows
let
the
me-
downtown.
Because you at the
let me
bid, you
tackle
would know.
this.
Yes.
Right.
I just want to be very clear on this.
Yeah.
The artist community and what they've done for the city of Peekskill is immeasurable. And they are an integral part of our city, and no one wants to get rid of them. And my plan with the artist community is to expand it.
That's not what he meant about getting
Hold
rid
on
of
for
them.
a second. I just want to say how important they are to the downtown, and we are known as an artist community. And I don't want to do anything to change that. They're a big draw, and they're a large undercurrent of economic activity in this town. I want to take them to the next level through a program that we're going to have with an open press conference, and we'll be inviting members of the press and all of the artists in the community to come to that next week. We're going to unveil it. I don't want to do it on this particular show.
Sure, there's a
Now,
show next week.
in relation to what Dominic said on the specific question that you raised, I sat on the bid board, the Business Improvement District in Peekskill, for 2 years. During that 2-year period, one of the biggest things we did was look at the current law that restricts residential uses to artists. And we had an option. We had basically 3 options, but they broke it down into 5 options. But the 3 options were leave the existing law alone, get rid of it entirely, or modify it somehow.
Like a mixed use.
Exactly. And the bid, and they had variations of that, but basically those were the 3 options. The bid board recommended unanimously, and try to get unanimous approval on anything with a board that size. The bid board voted unanimously to do something in the middle, to modify the definition of an artist, to expand the definition to include graphic artists and other types of artists that would fill a need for
Would have
housing.
been left out of that equation.
And it would bring in many more. It would bring in much more demand for the housing that can be retooled. A lot of people don't want to retool because they would be restricted, and they don't feel they can get the necessary demand to pay off their investment.
Right.
So we made that presentation to the city council. We made it on live on the government channel. We made it live. I was part of it, and we were thanked for our service, and nothing ever happened. So it's just another example of this administration saying no, or not saying anything. But this is something that just a simple vote could expand that, and that was supported by the artists. That simple vote could have expanded that artist district, created more of a demand for residential use in the city, and would have expanded economic activity. People would have been fixing up those buildings and realizing a return on their investment. And it's just another way that we could have got rid of some of those vacant storefronts and buildings, but
Okay, now, we're running out of time.
Sure.
And I want to give you a chance to almost close the show, because we get to close the show.
Okay.
But I want you, like I said, you got the independence line. That means that people view you as a person with an open mind, that you're not, and I guess I don't think party affiliation matters in a local election, and playing well with others does. Why should people vote for you and members of your team in November?
I grew up here in the city of Peekskill. I know Water Street because I knew Railroad Avenue because I worked at Sorrento's making pizza through college. And Railroad Avenue looks exactly the same as it did in 1975 when I graduated high school, except Sorrento's isn't there anymore. If you think that there's adequate parking for the railroad station instead of a 4-story parking structure that was on the drawing board, vote for Mary Foster. If you want Railroad Avenue to look exactly the same as it does now, 4 years from now, 2 years from now, 6 years from now, vote for Mary Foster. If you think the best block in the city of Peekskill, Restaurant Row, with 5 vacancies is real progress in 6 years, vote for Mary Foster. If you think the rest of the vacancies in the downtown are okay, if you're satisfied with the level of progress this city has made in 6 years, then vote for Mary Foster. But if you're not, give me a chance. Give me a chance to turn this around. Give me a chance to turn around and attract real employers with real jobs. Turn around this business community, the downtown, and get stimulate some economic activity on those vacant buildings, and stimulate the waterfront by taking out the LWRP, dusting it off, calling up Mr. Ginsburg and saying, you are the preferred builder, you still are, it's never been revoked, the LWRP is still in effect, I'm not looking to build a 50-story hotel and casino.
LWRP?
The local waterfront redevelopment plan.
Okay.
And that was
Sorry to interrupt you.
that was implemented at great cost and expense to the city through professional planners under Mayor Testa, and that is a perfect plan. It restricts the height of buildings, it restricts what kind of businesses can go in which kind of lots. And since he already is the preferred developer and he already is the largest landowner, it's going to be a great infusion. If you think the city of Peekskill should remain the largest landowner in the overall city of Peekskill, vote for Mary Foster. I don't think the city should be in the real estate business. I don't think we should own the Carter property. I don't think we should own these vacant buildings and houses and vacant lots. We should sell them all immediately or put an auction up. And if you have an auction and you sell 60 properties in one day, the building department will be overflowing with building applications within 2 months after that. If you think that the mayor, no mayor in the city has ever had their own PR firm. No mayor ever has had to consult with their PR guy before they make a statement. No mayor has ever sat through a meeting like last Monday and let the deputy mayor grab the gavel and start banging on it. If you think the way people are treated in this city and the need for a PR firm or your own TV show week after week to tell you what's going to happen time and time again, but nothing ever seems to change, vote for Mary Foster. If you want real change, vote for me. I'll get rid of the special consultants, I'll get rid of the special counsels, I'll get rid of that PR firm, and I swear to God, I'll do it the first day I'm in office.
Now, I got a question for you. That's as we get to close the show. Are you going to put any more stop signs on these streets, or we got enough stop signs?
I know.
I mean, this is driving me crazy. I remember starting 18 years ago, you can actually go from point A to point B legitimately without breaking any laws in a matter of minutes. Now it's like you can have your lunch, your dinner, and every time you turn around, you're stopping. I'm serious. I mean, what is this mad obsession with stop signs?
Well, people that know me, and thank God they don't research my driving record, but I tend to agree with you. Look, there's a stop sign on every single corner in the city of Peekskill. We'll take a look at it.
All right, with that.
Me, I know it's just a matter to me what I look as government interference too much.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night,
you very much.
Frank,
Thank you very much for coming on.
Anyway, Frank, thank you, and good luck to you.
Thank you.